which doesn't help our kids, it doesn't help our teachers. It ticks off taxpayers. Around 80% of the households in Newton do not have children in the K through 12 public schools. And we need to show that we are spending their dollars wisely, or they're not going to invest, they're not going to be willing to invest in our schools. So that's how it started for me. I thought, what else are we doing wrong if we screwed that up that badly? And so I feel like there's a number of other issues that we're really not doing as well a job as we could. And Newton, who touts itself on its great education. I mean, I have a Newton education myself. I was excited to move back here for my kids to have that. So I just feel like we should be doing the most with our dollars that we can be and should be.
So the faucets to you were indicative of what could else be. I mean, because it almost sounds, you know, it's the faucets, but I mean, did that really, that motivated you?
Oh, that ticked me off to no end.
So how did the faucets wind up getting fixed? I'm almost afraid to ask.
I think because I emailed every single school committee member and alderman and CAG member and friend and neighbor that I had, and I believe I CC'd the tab, and started actually a wide email conversation about it, talking about facilities management and so on, and I hope that conversation is still going on with elected leaders. But I think basically I was a squeaky wheel, and so I don't know. I don't know that they ended up being fixed by this fall when school started again.
Let's talk to Sean for a second. You were the campaign manager for Ken Parker. Ken had signs everywhere, it seemed. There were Ken Parker signs. I mean, to me, it looked, driving around the city of Newton, that Ken Parker was going to be almost ordained mayor, in a sense, if you looked at the signs. What happened?
Well, first I'd say if anyone on our campaign heard you ask that question, they'd chuckle, because I talked a lot about yard signs during the campaign as the great illusion of success in an election. And I very much agree with what Ed was saying and what the Warren campaign did. And it was an approach that our campaign took as well. Obviously, we didn't get as much of the vote as we thought we might. But you know, yard signs, anybody can put up yard signs. What matters are which of the people are actually going to vote in the election. So we worked hard and we got a lot of signs out there, certainly. What we were really focused on was identifying our vote as well. And I think what some of the things that that we were working with is that an alderman is, you know, has much less of a base to raise money. As one thing. You know, the network is just a little bit smaller. I think probably the biggest hurdle we had is that anybody that knows Ken knows that he's kind of a scruffy guy that grew up in Newton, and a lot of people know him as the young, bombastic alderman. And in my view, I haven't lived in Newton that long by comparison to Ken or others, and I was very impressed with his policy knowledge, very impressed with the accomplishments he had on the Board of Aldermen. We were really looking to overcome a perception that was no longer real in people's mind, and I think that we definitely made a lot of headway in doing that, and that's why you saw so many signs. We had a ton of volunteers working for us, going door to door and sharing information about Ken's policy expertise and his experience and his ability to really make Newton a forward-thinking community in so many ways. And I'm really proud of what we accomplished. I know Ken is too, but I think you know, in this case we didn't come out on top, and I think we still had some distance to cover in that respect. I think also Bill Heck coming into the race changed things very much right at the end there. Ken was advocating some financial ideas that I think some Republicans were supporting. I'm an active member of the Newton Democratic City Committee, so that was, for me, I had to adjust and deal with that a little bit on the campaign, of course. But when he came in, he took a little bit of that support away from us as well, and that was certainly an issue.
It's interesting to me because, you know, Newton tends to be in some ways rather cliquish in many ways. I mean, you know, it's by village, it's by association, it's by, you know, insider versus reformer, which interestingly enough seems to shift depending on which election cycle we're talking about, who really is in and who really is being considered a reformer. It's not that there's a consistent left-right, it's almost what degrees of center we're at. And it's relatively unusual. And one of the things that I thought was really amazing was that there were a remarkable number of new people that were running in contested races this year, in particular the contested races, that were very qualified. And on the school side of things, you know, I mean, there was an incumbent slate that came out towards the end. There was a challengers slate that came out, and you know, two of the people that were on the challengers slate actually won, Margie Ross-Dector and Matt Hills. But the other four that were originally challenging incumbents didn't win, and I'm wondering, Emily, why you think, you know, were people just not interested in change in that regard? They got enough of it from the mayor, or they got enough of it somewhere else?
No, I think it's when you have 22,000 people coming out to vote and you're running for the first time, it's really hard to get in front of a good number of those people. And so I think, you know, when Jeff Epstein first ran, he lost by about the same percentage as some of these new challengers. And then he came back to win the next time because he built his base the first time, and then the next time was able to build on that base. So I'm quite confident that if these folks want to try it again, that at least some of them would probably be successful because they would have a base to then build from. So I don't view it as people weren't interested in change. I think the fact that we even had so many people being willing to run and so many people being willing to volunteer and help them and give them money shows that there is definitely a level of dissatisfaction with the leadership of our schools.
I think, though, if you think about it, the two elections where the kind of outsider won are elections in which there was no incumbent. In both cases, the Ward 8 person was retiring, as was the Ward 7 person. So they were two new people that were running, which is a different situation from having an outsider.
That's right. No one knocked off an incumbent.
Well, yes, that's right.
On the school committee, but I was going to comment actually that for a school committee member to win an election or the at-large aldermanic candidate, it's very difficult. With, you know, the best practice in a campaign is to ID your vote and to knock on doors and talk to voters directly. So if you had all the candidates for at-large aldermen and all the school committee members doing that, people in their houses would never be able to eat dinner, the children would never go to sleep, but it still works. And one candidate I wanted to mention that, in addition to Seti Warren, that showed the importance of that type of campaigning. I mean, yard signs simply just don't win elections. The things that win elections are going and talking to voters. And Dick Blazer in Ward 6, where I live, was a big surprise, and he did knock off a 26-year incumbent. I mean, George Mansfield has done amazing things for this city, and Dick Blazer simply went door to door and knocked on everybody's, you know, all the voters' houses in the ward, and he pulled off an amazing, what I think is an amazing upset.
Well, there were also, I think, some people that were very supportive of Blazer because, you know, there is, I guess if there, I don't really think there's an us-them thing necessarily as much as different degrees, and I think, for example, the Newton Center Task Force is a great example of, you know, where people want something to happen in Newton Center, but it's different degrees and varying degrees of what they want. You know, you could say that on one end, plant a tree and we'll be happy. On the other hand, put up 5-story buildings everywhere and we'll be happy, and maybe somewhere in the middle is probably right. You know, but it seems the Blazer part was also in part because the win was in part because George Mansfield has been somewhat conservative as to how land will be used. And Lyle Baker, as president of the board, has been somewhat conservative about various housing issues and land uses and all of that. Going to Ed for a second, you had a couple of columns, well, on the blog actually in particular, you had a lot to say. I mean, you really did, I'm going to just say, a terrific job about analyzing you know, what happened, and people could argue whether you were right or wrong in, you know, individual cases. But let's see if we can put something up on the screen that that you said at one point, and when they get that in the control room, I'll talk about that. But basically, what you here it is right here. This was part of your blog, and it was also part of, I believe, what was published in the tab. And you said Ward 1-4 was the only precinct in the entire city where all the school committee challengers won. Ladies and gentlemen, we have located the capital of angry Newton, and it is the lake. First of all, is there actually an angry Newton, or is that just a great writing style?
Well, I've never driven through Newton and seen the sign of where you're entering.
I mean, is it our 14th village, angry Newton?
It was part of a writing style. When we were actually, it's part of what we were talking about the political spectrum, and I was thinking over the past couple of years about how Newton is laid out politically, because in municipal elections, there's no real Democrat or Republican. These issues tend to merge and meld when they come down to street level, right? I mean, there's nothing political, there's nothing liberal or conservative about a pothole, okay? You just want a solution to your problem locally. It is how you deal with that solution, whether you're going to be conservative or liberal with regard to land use,